2 years ago, I made this post on Instagram, and since then, a lot has changed. But in order for us to understand how we got from there to where we are now, we have to take a step back. So fast forward just a few months after that Instagram post, Christian and I set up a meeting to sit down and kind of go over expectations of what we can expect going into the prep. And after watching a previous video from Christian on just breaking down his summer shredding style of dieting, I wanted to make sure that I put an emphasis towards a higher level of execution and a higher level of focus towards tracking and making sure that we're just clearly on the same page. And as crazy of a physique Christian had and that he's built for himself, I think we both knew that in order to get to the next level, the evolution of Christian Guzman, that we needed to put a little bit more of a focus and emphasis towards the nutritional focus and detail, while at the same time putting together a training plan that was really going to focus on bringing up his weaknesses. And that's exactly what we did. Now, after going through the very first prep with Christian, it was safe to say he had an opportunity to learn my style of coaching, while at the same breath, me learning his preferred style of being coached. There is no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to working with a client. Everybody has different personalities, everyone has different perspectives and different viewpoints, and needs to be coached in a different manner. But the one thing that was never sacrificed was the expectations that we had. So for example, if Christian sent in a late check-in, he wouldn't get a response. If Christian did not execute, there would not be macros that were adjusted. So there's certain things that we needed to emphasize in order to make sure that was clear across the board. And just because of those minute things that he probably wasn't ever used to before because he'd never had a coach before, those things amped up his ability to hold himself even just that much more accountable. So that first prep for the first 13 weeks was extremely efficient. We lost a lot of body fat in a lot of time and brought a hell of a package to the stage where Christian not only won his class, but was placed second in the overall at the Dallas Europa, which was a massive show in Dallas, Texas. And that gave Christian and I the confidence to truly not only learn his body in a short amount of time, but made us realize that we are an excellent team and we could truly do what we've set out to do, which is not only bring the best version of Christian to stage, but ultimately one day get his damn pro card. And just in that week alone of peak week, Christian and I got extremely close. So I stayed with Christian in Dallas for the full week where I put him through the ringer. You know, I pushed him harder than he's ever been pushed. I made sure that his meals were on time. I tried to focus on his sleep, which is the hardest thing when it comes to Christian. There's no question about that. Christian is somebody who juggles a lot. And when I mean juggles a lot, this man has a multitude of different businesses. This man has manufacturers in other countries, which means that if he's taking those meetings, the time differences are legitimately going to be a full 12-hour time difference. So when we're sleeping, they're up. So that means when we're supposed to be sleeping, he's up. And again, as hard of a worker as he is, when it comes to a prep, especially as you get closer and closer to the show, there's a certain level of sacrifice that needs to be had, and you can't sacrifice sleep. And that was one thing that I really tried to focus on amplifying with Christian, is understanding the importance of sleep. And even though we are still struggling with that today, it's gotten much better since we started working together. And just that detail alone gave his body just a breath of fresh air of waking up and feeling rejuvenated a little bit more consistently than at least it has in the past. So Christian has always had a previous dieting history of just simply crash dieting. So that was the biggest thing that we wanted to change from the first ever preps that he's ever done for himself compared to now working with me and Team Reform. We wanted to truly focus on slowing down the process, not sacrificing muscle tissue in that time frame, and inching our way down and pushing for a deeper level of conditioning when the time was right without sacrificing tissue. And that comes with understanding and learning someone's body. Because a lot of times, as athletes, we never think we're lean enough. So we're always gonna consistently push for that next level of conditioning, whether or not our body is ready and primed for it or not. And a lot of times, if you do it too early, that's when you're truly gonna sacrifice muscle tissue and sacrifice the end look, even if you fill up properly towards the end of this prep. So we decided to slow things down. Right? And even though for the first prep, we had to push it a little bit faster, when it came to the second prep, that's when things changed. So fast forward to the USA prep. So Christian just stepped off stage at the USA Championships where he placed 5th in his very first national show, missing his pro card by 3 placings, which is extremely prestigious and honorable, to say the least. The USA's is the biggest national show in the world. USA's is the most prestigious national show in the world. This is where Phil Heath, Derek Lunsford, this is where Kyron Holden, this is where some of the best bodybuilders of all time have stepped on stage, walked across that stage, and earned their IFBB pro card. Now, Christian, his very first attempt at the biggest show in the world, and I respected it. And a lot of times people will aim for the smaller shows in the earlier parts of the season, and Christian just wasn't feeling it. He wanted to go where the big dogs would go and to see where his physique stood against some of the best. And as a coach, I think there needs to be a little bit of strategy involved, but I fucking respected it and I was all for it. So we set our sights for USA Championships, and placing 5th in his very first national show is absolutely insane. So the main difference from the first prep to the second prep was not only the length. So instead of 13 weeks, we had over 20 weeks to truly dial it in. What also was different was the speed of loss. So in the beginning, Christian and I came to an agreement that we wanted to focus on slowing down the process. Instead of jumping cardio up to 6 sessions a week at 45 minutes like we did in the first prep, we had no set cardio. We only had 20K steps, which might seem like a lot to people, but when you own a gym, probably one of the biggest gyms in the world, and you are walking all day, 20K steps is pretty easy. Christian, throughout the day, on average, would get 17K. So adding that extra 3K just to be a little bit more attentive to it was something that we wanted to focus on. So we got his ass a Fitbit, and we told this man to start moving around a little bit more. From there, we started to see consistent progressions. Now, throughout that, we wanted to grow into the show. There's no question, if you want to be a pro, you're going to have to carry a well balance of shape, size, and conditioning. And in order for us to make sure that we had all 3, we had to start off the prep a little bit slower and focus on growing into the show. So food was very high to start, eating over 500 grams of carbs. And every single day we were prioritizing output training intensity in the gym. And the muscle groups we wanted to prioritize the most were our shoulders and our back. Our shoulders are going to help with the taper, and then our back was just going to allow us to separate ourselves when they said gentlemen face the curtains, because you cannot have too big of a back. And from there, we were off and running. Posing has always been a weak point for Christian. We took a lot of time in the first prep to truly prioritize setting a new foundation, a new base, and cleaning up a lot of bad habits that he previously instilled. Main focus was trying to find a way to create overall taper without sacrificing shape and size. And it's safe to say, in the first prep, we learned a lot of positive attributes about manipulation for Christian's physique. Now, due to a lack of practice in the off season, he did end up reverting back to some bad habits, but again, we were still able to clean things up, but not as much as I typically would have hoped. So going into the next show, we're gonna do that. And we're gonna make sure we truly prioritize a lot of the things that are within our control in order to bring his best package to stage. Now, once we got roughly halfway through the prep, that's when things started to amp up just a little bit more, amping up cardio, making sure that food was high, but also still progressive in terms of keeping us on track for being where we needed to be. Now, when we got down to the 6-week out mark, that's when things really started to amp up. Christian is so used to being ready early, and that was not our goal this time. Our goal was to be ready when we needed to be ready. So at 6 weeks out, things really started to amp up. We started to increase his consistency in cardio, his intensity in cardio, and his duration of cardio. We started off at 5 sessions a week, and then we increased to 6 sessions a week, then ultimately up to 7 sessions a week pretty quickly between that 6 to 4 week out mark, and then amping it up from 40 minutes all the way up to an hour and 15 minutes in total. Again, progressively, but we got it up there. And then once we hit that hour and 15 minute mark, that's when food started to get a little bit more manipulated as well. Again, the goal was still to keep his food higher longer, which we even did closer and closer to the show. But as we got to about that 3-week out mark, that's when we started dropping things and getting closer and closer to depletion days. And Christian has never, ever eaten below 250 grams of carbs when he prepped himself. When we got to roughly that 3-week out mark, we started pushing a little bit harder, getting closer to that 200 gram mark. And then as we got closer from there, 100 grams. And then from there, we got some depletion days in. And at the end of the day, in simple, we brought the best version of Christian to the USA stage. It was one hell of a package. It was a great combination of fullness, conditioning, and again, if posing was 100%, we would have emphasized shape just that much more. And that's what landed him in the first call-outs amongst one hell of a lineup. So after prejudging at USA's, after he stepped off stage and got first call-outs, I decided to do a little bit of a test. I wanted to see how his body would respond with a little bit more of a carb push to see if we could fill him out to get more data going into the next show. Typically after prejudging, they already have their mind made up for what the placings are gonna be. So with that being said, it's a little bit more safe when it comes to the amateur ranks to try new things. Now keep in mind, as a coach, I'm not going to sacrifice the look, but again, if we can have a little bit of testing within that time frame to see what it looks like on the actual stage in terms of finals, I'm going to do it. So after prejudging, we hit Christian with 6 pancakes, butter, and regular syrup to see how his body came to life. And the results, it's safe to say, worked in our favor. We got a chance to see Christian's body fill out a little bit more. Now I think with a little bit more of a time frame from prejudging to finals, we would have had a better opportunity to see it again sit a little bit longer, which I think would have been a little bit better. But you also saw fullness throughout the body that we've never seen. So again, taking added data from this prep into the next prep. And that's our main focus, because we are consistently learning clients' bodies. Clients' bodies change every single meal, every single prep, and with every pound of added muscle tissue, you have to make sure you learn how to keep it or you can sacrifice it. And again, the main focus is consistently being progressive in understanding how your client's body is being progressive. So again, one hell of a year, one hell of a show, and the job's not done.